of our India's exclusive interview with Jyoti Mayal, President, TAI, Travel Agents Association of India. Welcome, Mrs. Jyoti.
Thank you. Good evening. Good morning.
Now, let's start with your assessment of India's tourism potential from a long-term perspective.
Well, India is a beautiful country. It's a plethora of opportunities. And tourism, I think, is the main sector to be investing in right now because I think India can offer everything. This is the only country in the world, I think, which has all the seasons, more than the seasons that anyone can dream of. We have everything from the beaches to the mountains to the valleys. So there's nothing that's lacking in India. Now with the wonderful infrastructure, with airports getting more, railways flying much more, with the road connectivity so good. I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think it's time for us to encash this opportunity because what we've missed many years ago, India could have been the largest hub between the East and the West. Today countries like Dubai and countries like Singapore are. India should have been that hub actually to connect the East and the West. But we lost that opportunity. But there's always a time to come back, and I think this is the right time for us to get back and get that connectivity, get that business booming into India. It could be direct inbound tourism to India, or it could be a layover business to India. It could be a stopover business in India. But the tourism needs to move up, and I think that's the opportunity we all need to look at, and I'm sure we'll get it if we all work towards it in the right format. I think nothing can stop us, and this industry post-COVID we've seen is a very resilient industry, and we are capable of standing up on our own because that's what happened after COVID. The government didn't help us so much, leaving that, of course, they gave us a support system as just mental support, let's put it that way. But I think we have an opportunity. The industry is strong.
Right. So now it's bringing me to my next question. That is, are TAI members well placed to exploit this emerging tourism potential?
Yes, they are. And I think I'm very proud to say that TAI is Mother Association. What I always say, is the oldest and premier nodal body, established in 1951 when there was no one else in existence, literally. Just a couple of years after independence, and to have a vision that, tourism is going to be a very important aspect of the country. I think for the association to come forward and to start exploring opportunities, I think the credit goes to the forefathers of the association. So we keep it's an ongoing process for TAI that we always educating them, we always doing skilling for them, we always making them learn for new destinations within the country or outside the country. We keep working very closely with all the states, with all the countries, with all tourism stakeholders, could be hotels, could be cruise companies. So we actually keep inculcating a lot of knowledge and filtering a lot of ways to sell also to our members. Now, see, every member, it's his onus, let's put it that way, or his commitment towards his own business, how much he wants to change or what he wants to adapt. So everyone keeps adapting to their own ways. So when we do something where we are telling about conferencing, people adapt whoever into conferencing the new aspects. If someone is doing leisure, we tell them to do leisure. Someone is doing adventure, we help them that. But post-COVID, we've seen a lot of people have got into a lot of new avenues, and we have supported them throughout. Not only post-COVID, I think during COVID, I think we were the only association. I think I did more than 2,000 webinars in 2 years. So that says a lot for how many webinars we did, how many countries we tied up with, how many states we interacted with. Countries which were not even looking at India started looking at us during COVID time because our outreach amongst ourselves became much more larger than life actually, because we were all dying literally in COVID, but we were still doing that. And that's where countries like Dubai and Maldives benefited a lot, because and even Vietnam, I think maybe having, one a week webinar with, Vietnam at that time, and see how post-COVID, how many flights they have started and how many people are traveling to Vietnam. So, people did encash those opportunities, and that's what we teach our members, and we'll try to educate them to say how you can encash these opportunities.
And also this brings me to my next question, that is remaining cost efficient in this challenging environment or dealing with complex government rules. What are the major challenges that travel agents face in India?
See, the challenges are too many. Challenges in the sense of policy reforms, which have to be there. Of course, infrastructure still the last mile connectivity or the last mile of infrastructure is still lacking, and we need to still go there. I was just reading a report. We are still 28th in number when it comes to airports. We're going to be having 500 airports by another year. but that's still not many. And India is a huge country. So we need to look into all those things and all those challenges of infrastructure, digitalization. We still need taxation benefits. We need to, you can't tax tourism. Tourism cannot be taxed at all, because tourism, you want people to visit, and when you want people to visit your country, the taxation structure should be the least, because actually they are coming into your country, spending in your country, and they are anyway contributing to the growth of the country by investing in it, by buying, by staying, and everything what they do here is the money coming to the country. So why are we taxing them also? Are we taxing them to pay up in our country? I don't think that's the right mindset. I think that has to go very differently, and I have a very different opinion on that, and that's the reason we keep telling the government. So all these policies need to be changed, and of course we need to do a lot of promotion. Marketing and promotion needs to be done by the government, and I don't say only government. We also as private stakeholders need to do a lot. It's our industry. We need to invest in it. Why would we tell the other country, any ministry to invest in it? Yes, but we do need a focus. The ministry is there to focus on us, support us in many ways, and that is the path we need to actually get onto and resolve and say, how can we work together? Because that, I feel, is very, very important. So those synergies need to come in. There are a lot of people who are still not into digitalization. They're not into virtual reality. I think that's the government's onus to see that the world, the country, India changes quickly, and everyone starts adapting it. We are the largest country which is using the mobiles. So that means even your people at the grassroots are using mobiles. So they know what digitalization is. They know what virtual reality is, because they are not looking at anything else except their own screen. So how do we convert that into being a positive way, and how do we do the marketing for ourselves?
And like we discussed earlier also, from challenges to trends like ecotourism versus religious tourism, domestic versus international, what are the emerging trends, and will they sustain over a longer period? Like, which will be more impactful? Let's say ecotourism or sustainable tourism or religious tourism. Like, it's just a minor
all these niche tourisms are going to stay. It has its own space. I believe in spirituality. I will go for a spiritual tourism. But sustainability and ecotourism have to be the structure of tourism. Because today, it's not only a buzzword. We are seeing the way the weather is changing. I mean, we are witnessing it. We've seen the cyclones come at the wrong time, which we have never witnessed. We are seeing floods happening. So all this is related to sustainability. And we need to see what trees we are cutting. Each citizen of this country, or the world, I would say, every human being needs to invest. So that needs to be combined with every niche market. It could be conferencing, it could be spiritual, it could be wellness, it could be leisure. So that ecotourism, sustainability, all those products need to be inculcated in all niche tourism. But niche tourism is a lot. There could be cruises, there could be tribal tourism, there could be culinary, there could be something else, there could be golf, there could be sports, there could be whatever you like. So those are different niche markets that will emerge, and they will continue to emerge. What I need yesterday is not what you need today, and it's not the next generation what is going to need. So that is why the scope of tourism is huge. You have an opportunity to keep changing, keep modifying, keep investing, and luring the people again back to your country.
And does TIE have a strategy in place to tap the tourism fad among young Indians?
Yes. So that's what I said. We are always educating our members to how. So it's in COVID time, we saw a huge growth of solo tourism. Yeah. And we started educating people on solo tourism. We started talking to tourism boards, on solo tourism, because we see that trend on the rise, not only in India, but globally. Solo tourism is very much on the rise. And same with youth tourism. Youth will always be wanting to travel. Post-COVID, they have learned there are only two things that matter in life. It's life itself and their loved ones. They have come to that realization. And if you see the Western world, they've always lived in plastic cars. They've always enjoyed life in their own way. Half of them have never even traveled outside America. Half of them don't even have passports in America. But they've always utilized the money they've earned, spent it on themselves. I think that's the structure now. The youth also says that we want to, enjoy life. We want to share it with our loved ones. We want to travel, see life, and see life and get all these experiences. So youth tourism is something to focus on, and that's what I keep telling my members whenever we have a meeting. I keep educating them, and we keep having, whenever we have our conventions and we have our conferences, we have our knowledge sessions, we keep getting speakers to educate them too. Speakers who can independently speak. It's not about only about me telling them. It's also about by the educative and people who are knowing what they're talking, the real stalwarts of the industry or people who are working in niche markets. We keep getting them to talk. We had recently gone to Sri Lanka. I got a historian to talk about, tourism, cultural tourism. How can it incite the youth in our country? How you can relate Sri Lanka to India? Because there are so many similar things. We have the same deity here, we have the same deity there. So how do we connect the two? So there are a lot of things that need to be connected, and that's what the youth wants today.
That's right. And one current trend is Ayodhya. And is Ayodhya a potential game changer in the tourism space? Do you agree on this? Or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you see, it's always like this, that firstly, we are very spiritual tourists. We are not spiritual, let's say, we are very God-fearing people. Indians are very God-fearing people. We may not even pray so much, but we are God-fearing. For everything, every good that happens, we thank the God, and every bad that happens, we blame him. So that's the way we live. So for us, any structure which is a religious structure means a lot to us, because I think we as Indians have been taught to respect each and every religion. I mean, that's what I was taught in school. I went to a Christian Catholic school, but I'm not a Catholic myself, but I still went to the chapel and prayed every day. So those things are inculcated into our families that, God is one. That's what was always taught to us, that God is one. And any good religious place that we can visit is always that we want to go. So I think Ayodhya is going to be a huge connect, because every Indian would, at least in the lifetime, go once, if not more. So that means, you have the entire population and the huge population going to Ayodhya at least once. And that's the reason you see continuous people going there. And for the outside world, I think it's a way to come and connect to India. It's also a way to see what India is doing. And it's a beautiful piece of architecture. So there are a lot of things that come into it. It's your piece, it's your architecture, it's your mind that wants to come and see these things. And that is why there are so much footfalls in Ayodhya. We have the same in Amritsar. So we have in the Golden Temple, we have the same in Vaishno Devi, we have the same in Shirdi, because we are by nature, we are God-fearing. And the whole world, I think, loves to come and visit these places. And you've seen, all these places have become a part of our circuits when they are going. People who go to Amritsar, all the foreigners are visiting the Golden Temple. So these things are happening. People who are coming to Delhi are visiting the Gurdwaras today and the Mandirs today. So, I earlier never used to see those because they were not allowed properly. People were not happy to welcome them. Today we are telling them, yes, this is our religion. These are the religions that Indians follow. Come and visit, see what we've done, and talk about your gods. So I think that will always be a puller for the traveler. Always a puller.
After Ayodhya, what's Thai's take on Maldives versus Andaman line of thinking? Do you think that in the long run, travel agents will lose on Maldives front as Andaman has limited development potential because of its sensitive ecosystem?
See, this is a very political topic, and when the day the Maldives abused our Prime Minister, I think we were the first association to go vocal on the television also. So we were all over the media, and so there are two aspects. I talk about tourism as one because I've always maintained that tourism does not need any borders. Even during COVID time, I think Thai was one association that kept saying that the COVID didn't need any restrictions. It did not need a boarding card, it did not need a passport, it did not need a border. It was crossing without anything. So why were there things on as borders to human beings? Because I think that is one way. I don't know. People don't want to travel, don't travel. You tell them that this is an advisory, people don't travel. But to absolutely stop business and to stop all this, I don't know, it's a thought process. I've always believed in that. So I always say, one thing is for sure, the tourism brings peace, tourism brings communication, and I think tourism should never die, because that's one thing which will keep you going. So even when if you don't like someone and he comes to your house, you welcome him. You don't kick him out of the house. You don't slam the door. We are Indians. We believe in that truly. So that's why we are Atithi Deva Bhava.
Exactly.
Because I think when you come to my home, I may not like you, but I'll still offer you a glass of water. I'll still offer you the basic courtesy because I am like that. It's human nature.
That's a respect that we give.
So I think tourism should never be restricted. But coming to the other aspect, I don't think any country, and I say that very loudly, that any country head has a right to condemn any other country's, head. Because I think that's very bad protocol. No one has a right to condemn our leader or us as Indians. Talking about Indians as not being good, talking about Indians as not being clean, not stinking, or whatever. Why should we travel to a country which says things like this? There are so many other countries to go to, but they have to realize that if they don't need us, because they continue to say that they don't need us, they are going other countries. Well, good for them. But I wouldn't even want to tell any Indian not to travel. Everyone has their own self-respect. And if I know I'm going to a certain place where I'm not appreciated to, I will not go myself. So you need to justify your own movements in life. And that is what, you have to do. If you think you still want to go to Maldives, please go ahead. But if you think you want to go there and you will look down on by certain people and you are okay with it, fine. So this is your own perception and this is the way it should be. But one thing is, no one has a right to abuse me or abuse my country because I am an Indian first.
That is it. And that should be approached with every country going forward. They should be disrespecting each other's heads or even the personal over there.
Yes, absolutely.
And lastly, what would be Tai's 5 suggestions for the new government in the terms of boosting tourism and making life easier for travel agents?
My first and most important, which I keep saying is, and I'm saying it again, is taxation. I think taxation needs to be looked into. The TCS, the GSTs, all need to be looked into to make life easier for a travel agent. We have become tax collectors for the government, which I just don't agree that we should be focusing so much from the time that we invest in our business in taxation. Because we are responsible for all these taxes, there should be a way. And today with the technology growing, there should be a way that whenever the money is deposited or taken, it's like a corporate world, it's deducted automatically and it doesn't come to me that I have to deposit to the government. I have to see my books. I have to take an undertaking from the client that he hasn't traveled for more than what he's supposed to be traveling. And the TCS is applicable, not applicable, GST is applicable. So all those things need to be looked up and they have to be, reviewed and a proper aspect needs to come out. Secondly, I also say that the government needs to keep continuing to work with us and creating tourism policies and aviation policies and every other aspect of whatever is related to tourism. Tourism is a huge value chain. It doesn't start with tourism ministry and ends with tourism ministry. We have aviation, we have cruising, we have tourism, transport, we have culture, we have skilling, we have so much more to, so many ministries which are intertwined. So we need to see how we can collectively work together. So how does one go to one ministry, solve and resolve all issues, then to go from one pillar to post to really resolve the issues, Because I think the issues when they come, we are actually going from one ministry to the other and this should not be happening. There should be one focal in ministry to say that we come to us and then we will see what happens where. So those are two things which come very much in mind. Thirdly, I also say that we are also a consumer when it comes to selling tickets, or we are selling hotels, or we are selling any product. So we should also be looked as a consumer and our money should be protected from all these airlines that are going bust. Because these airlines go away, they take away our money and we are left. So whatever we have earned in 5 years goes away in one day, and then we again start earning. But because we don't have any other avenue to go to and our members are, travel agents, so they have to go back to the business, they bear the brunt and again start selling. So I think there has to be a way, where this needs to be structured properly to say that every consumer could be a stakeholder or a travel agent should be protected. So these three. The fourth, I think the ministry should do and support the travel agents to do a lot of, marketing. because I think marketing is needed for the growth of our own inbound tourism, which
That's
is not
right.
happening since couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think marketing is something which every country does. Every country comes to India, they use TIE's strength to do road shows. They use TIE's strength to do so many other, programs. We do, skill programs with them. We do educative programs with them. We make out country specialists. But India is not doing it. So we need India to do it. As a matter of, this was the first time, partnered with Ministry of Tourism and did a roadshow in Dubai at the ATM. So I think we were the only association who's been able to drive that, because I believe, and I very strongly believe it, and the entire management committee sitting right now at the helm of affairs, we all believe that we should be investing parallelly with the government to say that this industry progresses well, because this has to happen. And I keep saying that we are here, the policies and reforms need to be done. That is very, very important, because that is the only way. So the government needs to look into the reforms, the simplification of visas, the policy, tax structure, and that's what they're there for. And then the business becomes easy for each and every person to get in. And of course, digitalization, like I said, skilling should be a very big thing. I'm also the chairperson for the Tourism and Hospitality Skill Council. So I work very closely with the Ministry of Skill Development. So we are all the time skilling the youth and the people to get into this industry. But I think we need to educate them, we need to skill them more, and also we need to pay them more. So I think there should be some structure, and we should be taken as an industry in that sort to say that this industry really progresses well.
That's right. Thank you, Mrs. Jyoti, for such a wonderful discussion and insights about travel industry.
Thank you so much. I hope I could satisfy you with your with my answers.
Absolutely, ma'am. Stay tuned for more such enriching conversation with Safari India.